Hey Gateway, welcome back and thanks for joining me again. Today we're going to look at the third psalm, and the context here of this psalm is that David is in a horrible situation in his life. One of his sons, named Absalom, is attempting to take the throne from David. He's literally raised up an army and is trying to take the throne away from him. And then here in this third psalm, we see David's recorded prayer to God in this crisis. Now, I can't imagine you and I ever experiencing something quite as drastic as an attempted coup over us. But what we can do, though, is emulate the faith that we see here from David in this crisis. And so Psalm 3 begins with verse 1 and 2 with a simple lament, saying, God, I have so many enemies, so many people are rising up against me, and they are saying that you have left me and you have abandoned me. And we see right there in the start that it's healthy and good for us to bring our problems to God. Because when we do that, we're agreeing with God that not everything is good here, that there are things that are wrong in this world, and then importantly, we are looking to God to help us to get through this. And also note too, one of the accusations that David is facing is that because the bad things are happening to him, people were saying that God had left him, God had forsaken him. They're even mocking his faith in God. And when that happens to us, and we may feel abandoned, or we may feel that that God has left us, the solution is not just to cave into that, but actually turn to God in that crisis, in that time. And so no matter how it looks or feels, we can still turn to God and say, God, help. And to remember this, that a disaster, a crisis in our lives does not necessarily mean that God is judging or that God is cursing. That's not what that means. Jesus actually said he will never leave or forsake you. And so we don't have to worry about God abandoning us and leaving us, because Jesus promised he's not going to. And then, so that's his verse 1 and 2. Now verse 3 and 4 here, the psalm, David does something that's probably one of the most neglected aspects of modern prayer. That is, he spends time reflecting on who God is, on the character of God. And this is, I think, really important for us to bring back into our own prayers. Because when we think about who God is, that alone is therapeutic. Because our confidence isn't in our well-crafted prayer, or isn't in our what we say, or even necessarily in that our prayer is answered. Because sometimes we don't even know what we're supposed to pray, or how to pray in the situation. Our confidence is in God. And so David here turns and reflects on who God is. And he has 4 quick things here that he lists off. He says, God, you are a shield. He says, you're the one I look to for protection. I can't even see all the threats out there, but I'm trusting you to keep me safe from them. I'm trusting you, God. And he says, secondly, that you are my glory. He's saying that every good thing I have in my life is from you. Anything good in my life is from you, God. And the third thing he says is like, you lift up my head. You are the one that lifts my head up. In our modern vernacular, we'll say, he lifts up my chin. Our world can really weigh us down with problems, with pain, with our own sin, can really weigh us down. And the biblical pattern here is when we get weighed down, when we feel stressed and strained, we turn to God, and God lifts us up. And see, a lot of times I think we have this reverse. We feel that to be religious or holy means you got to go to church and feel guilty and shame. But that's not the biblical pattern. The biblical pattern is, we come to God with whatever problems, whatever pain, burdens we have, and he lifts them. He takes them off. And the fourth thing here he says is that you answer when I call. And that's that our prayers don't fall on deaf ears. We trust that God hears, and he will do what is right. And then verse 5 to 6 in the psalm, he shows what happens after we reflect on who God is. As our faith increases, so does our peace and our serenity. And David says here, I'm able to lay down and go to sleep. I'm able to give it to God and go to sleep. And so and that's why this is so important, because if we just focus on our problems in our prayer time, there's not a lot of peace in that. The peace comes when we reflect on who God is. And once we realize who God is, then we have this peace. Going, you know what? I can trust you. You are much bigger than this problem. You're much bigger than me. I can trust you, God. So I can give it to God and go to sleep. And he says, I awake in the morning because you sustained me. And that's a cool observation, because often when we talk about an act of God, we think of like this incredible stuff or the supernatural stuff. But what David is saying is here, even in the everyday normal occurrences of life, such as waking up, I see your hand. I see the hand of God here. It's evidence that God is active in my life. He's sustaining his world. In every moment of my life, I can know that God is here with me. And then now, after, he's got peace, he's got a confidence in God, and now verse 7, he now calls on God to act. He says, God, arise, save me, deliver me from this problem. And that's where a big step comes in prayer. So faith isn't just fatalism. It's not saying, I trust you, God, so work it out. That's not biblical faith. Biblical faith is, yes, I trust you. Now, God, would you please act in the situation? Will you come through here? Will you save me here? Will you save? He says, God, arise. I trust you, and I'm asking you to help. And now, but his description here of what he asks is pretty graphic and pretty stark and harsh to our ears. He uses terms, he says, God, will you strike my enemies in the jaw? Will you smash and break their teeth? Now, that doesn't sound very Jesus-y. That sounds pretty contrary to what Jesus said. Jesus says to bless those that curse you and to, turn your cheek. And this very different approach here we see. And I want to pause for a second here because it's important. The first thing to notice is that David is different than you and I, in that he was literally a king and he was literally facing an army in an imminent battle. And that's not the case with you and I. But more than that, we as Christians, Jesus said his kingdom is not of this world. And we are not to wage war as the world does. We're a different ethic that we follow here. But there's a metaphor here that he's using. David, though the battle is real he's about to face, though the army is real, he's still using a metaphor. He's saying, smash their teeth, strike him on the jaw. He's saying, defang this threat. Render them unable to bite and cause harm. He's saying, God, make this harm powerless. Make it futile. And that's something you and I can still pray in our own life. Say, God, this is a threat I'm facing. Will you take away the harm, take away the destruction, take away the pain, take away this wickedness. Stop it, please. And that's something you and I are right to pray. God, stop the harm from happening. And then the psalm ends with a grand statement. He says, God, from the Lord comes salvation. From God comes deliverance. He's saying every act of salvation we see, every saving act is a token of God's goodness in our life and a sign of what is to come, of God's complete redemption, God's complete salvation over all that is wrong that we can look forward to. And the psalm ends with a benediction. He says, may the blessings of God be upon you. And that's my prayer for you as well, is that may you experience the blessings of God in your life. May your threats and your enemies be defanged. May you be able to sleep soundly tonight knowing that God is in control. May you awake in the morning with the realization that you live in a world sustained by God. May he be a shield to you and protect you from harm. May he lift your head and ease your burdens. And may he be your glory. May your face be radiant from reflecting his glory. And may you bring all your problems to God and experience his salvation. And so, friends, that's the third psalm. And I pray for each of us to experience those blessings. Amen.